Allahu, 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 Allah. Allahu, 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 Allah.
I want to share a little story with y'all from the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's mentioned in a hadith, in a narration, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after about 11 years of preaching and teaching Islam, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went through some very difficult circumstances. I want us to have an appreciation for what the first 11 years of prophethood meant and what that was like for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So at the age of 40, he receives divine revelation. He receives the message. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. For 3 years after that, he is told to share this message, preach to those people who are very close to him, immediately around him, friends and family. So Khadija, Zayd ibn Haritha, Ali bin Abi Talib, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhum, may Allah be pleased with all of them, he starts communicating and talking to these people, and he builds a little core around him. After 3 years of this private, close, personal circle, building of this little close personal circle, the Prophet ﷺ is then told by Allah to take the message public. And that's when the Prophet ﷺ starts preaching openly in Mecca. And that continues for the next 4 years. But what is an outcome or a consequence of preaching and teaching the message openly and publicly is that there is a very strong response to his message, because it contradicts the way that they live their lives. It is directly preaching against maybe what they believe in. It is telling them that a lot of the core fundamental beliefs that they have are incorrect. And so there's a very strong pushback. And initially it's disagreement, and then argumentation, and then name calling, belittling, humiliating, ridiculing, mocking. And then it grows further to slander and defaming his character. And then it goes even further to violence and aggression. And it eventually gets to the point where it's all out persecution and torture in the open. There are Sahaba that are being strung up, Sahaba that are being killed in the streets, being dragged around, tied to the backs of horses, being whipped and tortured in public. The Prophet ﷺ himself is attacked multiple times. Assassination plans and attempts are made. And this continues for 4 years until it reaches this peak to where it's a very, very bad combustible situation. And so finally the Prophet ﷺ then reaches the next phase of the message of prophethood, which was to be outcast, to be isolated, to be uncommunicated, and completely boycott. And him and his followers and his family and anyone who was willing to support him was completely cut off, and they were boycott, and they were separated from the community. And that lasted for 3 years. And you know, again, one of the tragedies for us today, that at least I feel that I feel a certain weight because of this. I feel it's very tragic. Standing in front of you, talking about 10 years of preaching and hardship and sacrificing. And I'm talking about it in 10 minutes. In a very comfortable, temperature-controlled room. And it just feels tragic to me at times. And it's the reason why a lot of times we don't fully appreciate what that was like. It was very difficult. Those 3 years of boycott, very specifically, because one thing I've noticed is a lot of times we'll talk about that literally, like in a couple, the most extensive seerah book, we'll talk about those 3 years of boycott like in 4 or 5 pages. There are narrations which talk about the fact that they would hear at night going to sleep, they would hear the cries of babies who were hungry. They buried so many children and babies at that time who died due to disease, malnourishment, starvation. They could hear the women and the mothers crying who had buried their babies the day before. It was a time of great suffering and sacrifice. And when those 3 years of boycott ended, 10 years of non-stop hard work and sacrifice, beyond what we can even imagine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested the Prophet ﷺ further. And the Prophet ﷺ experienced the greatest personal tragedy of his life. That was the death of his beloved wife Khadija radiallahu anha. And then literally a couple of months after the passing of his beloved wife Khadija, who had been married to for 25 years, the mother of his children, the love of his life, his partner in life, he suffered the loss of his uncle Abu Talib, who wasn't just a distant uncle. This was the man who had raised the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was his family. He meant everything to him. And the Prophet ﷺ suffered through these tragedies back to back to back to back. And the situation in Mecca only grew more intense and more dire and more desperate. And the opposition intensified. The enemy, the opposition did not back off and say, we're going to take a little bit of we're going to call a truce or a ceasefire. He suffered through personal tragedy. They said, no, let's kick him while he's down. And they pushed even harder and further. And the Prophet ﷺ at that point in time made a very, very difficult decision. He loved his city. He loved Mecca. He loved his people. He cared for his people. He wanted nothing more than guidance and eternal success for his people. But he made a very difficult decision at that point, at that time. And that was that the Prophet ﷺ decided to look outside of Mecca. And when we as Muslims today, 1400 years later, when we think about Arabia, we think about the two big cities in Arabia, obviously because of Islam, we think of Mecca and Medina. But at that point in time, and the Quran actually makes reference of this fact, رَجُلٌ مِّنَ الْقَرْيَتَيْنِ عَظِيمٌ. The two major cities of Arabia at that time were Mecca and Taif. And Taif was home to the major tribes of Hawazin and Thaqif, whose power and numbers and fighting ability actually rivaled that of Quraysh and of Mecca. The leader in Taif, Abu Mas'ud al-Thaqafi, was actually a leader whose reputation rivaled that of Abu Jahl's. And so the Prophet ﷺ, through a lot of consideration and thought and prayers, decided to turn his attention and look towards Taif, and decided to explore the opportunities there in Taif. And so the Prophet ﷺ, past the age of 50, he suffered for 11 years, or 10, almost 11 years, through great sacrifices. He's seen his followers and his friends, his students, his beloved companions tortured and even buried. His own daughter and his son-in-law had to flee, leave Mecca and move to Abyssinia, East Africa. He's lost his wife and his uncle. You can imagine how much a human being would be hurting at that point. And he's past the age of 50. And he decides to travel to Taif. Taif from Mecca is about 60 some odd miles. And the Prophet ﷺ took that journey on foot. He made that journey on foot. He didn't even have transportation. He couldn't even afford to arrange for transportation. He made the journey on foot. And it said it took 4 days of non-stop, consistent walking and traveling for him to go from Mecca to Taif. And it was just two people, not some big entourage, not how we think of like leaders traveling today. It was two people, the Prophet ﷺ and his devout companion, adopted son, Zayd ibn Haritha radiallahu anhu. And just the two of them took this journey on foot. And they traveled 4 days non-stop until they reached Taif. And when the Prophet ﷺ reached Taif, he decided that let me try to go about this very strategically. The Prophet ﷺ was a great thinker. And he was very strategic in his approach. And so the Prophet ﷺ went to the leadership of Taif. And he spoke to the leaders of the tribe. And it said there were 3 brothers who were the sons of that great leader of Taif. And he spoke to each one of them. And each one of them responded to the Prophet ﷺ in a very dismissive, insulting manner. One of them said, one of them said that, really, God couldn't find anybody else to make a prophet? One of them called him a liar to his face. The third one said, I just don't even want to talk to you. Because if you are a prophet, then picking a fight with you would be causing trouble. And if you're not a prophet, I don't talk to liars. So basically, I'm fine with the way things are. I really don't even need to be talking to you. So I ain't buying what you selling. So move along. And all 3 of them dismissed the Prophet ﷺ in this manner. And it said that the Prophet ﷺ was willing to invest so much time and energy. Again, when we read the story of Taif in a Seerah book, how much time does it occupy? How many pages does it occupy? A page, 2 pages, 3 pages? The Prophet ﷺ stayed in Taif for 10 days. He had to schedule time, wait in line, finally get an appointment, and then get rescheduled, and then wait in line outside the door to be told, come back tomorrow, he's busy. And he just waited and waited and waited, kept investing, kept working. This is Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it took him days and days to just get through the door and be able to get a couple of minutes of time from these leaders, and they just dismissed him. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after the first few days, after trying to talk to them, but being sent on his way, he finally decided, all right, let me go interact with the people. Maybe the people will understand what I have to say. And he started trying to go and talk to people, families, communities, trying to talk, engage with the people. And he found the people to be equally insulting and dismissive. And nobody was willing to listen. Until finally on the 10th day, they sent a couple of individuals as representatives on behalf of the whole community to go deliver this message to that man who's visiting us, who's been going around talking to everybody about some stuff. They sent a couple of representatives, tell him he needs to leave now. Ukhruj min biladina. You need to leave our town now. That's it. So the Prophet ﷺ said, that's fine. You know, I can take a message, I can take a hint. And the Prophet ﷺ told Zayd ibn Haritha, let's get our stuff and let's be on our way. So the Prophet ﷺ packs up his bags and they start to leave Taif. But this is where things get even more interesting. Some of the folks in Taif decided to not let him leave so easily. You have to understand what this is talking about. If somebody's trying to enter in and you harass them and question them, when somebody's leaving, they didn't even want him to leave peacefully. He didn't argue with anyone there. He didn't pick a fight with anyone. Somebody said, I don't want to talk to you. He said, that's fine. That's fine. I won't bother you. But they didn't want to let him leave peacefully. So they decided to gather up a lot of just the teenagers and the guys kind of hanging around on the corner, some of the thugs off the streets. They gathered all these guys up and they said that we need you to make it very clear to him that he's not welcome back here again. So the narration says that the narration says that they lined up on the route leaving Taif. On the road out of Taif, they lined up on both sides of that road. One narration actually says that they sat down. They lined up and they sat down. And they gathered up rocks and stones. And when the Prophet ﷺ came out of the boundary of Taif and came out onto that highway, the road, the narration says every single time he lifted his foot up off the ground, I want you to comprehend what that means. Like imagine walking, every step that you take. Every time he lifted a foot up, they threw rocks at him. And then every time he put that foot down, they threw rocks at him again. And then when he lifted the other foot, they threw another rock at him. Everybody. And when he put that foot back down, they threw rocks at him again. One narration even explicitly says that some of them were actually targeting his feet. They were targeting his feet. They were specifically throwing rocks at his feet to injure his feet so that he couldn't even walk out. He'd have to crawl out. And the narration actually explicitly mentions that the Prophet ﷺ started walking faster. Not responding, not looking, not picking up a rock and throwing it back, not cursing them out. He started just walking faster. Let me just end this situation. I don't mean anyone any trouble or any harm. So he started walking faster and faster, and they kept throwing the rocks faster and faster. And this kept on going on until the Prophet ﷺ finally reached a place that has a couple of names mentioned in the books of history, the books of Seerah. It's either called Qarnu Tha'alib or it's called Qarnu Manazil, which basically is estimated to be about 3 miles outside of Taif. Can you imagine how long would it take to walk 3 miles? With this type of interference, an hour? If you're making good time, good pace, an hour? Can you imagine having rocks thrown at you literally every second, every couple of seconds, or every 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds? Rocks, multiple rocks hitting you for 3 miles straight for an entire hour? Imagine how badly beaten and bruised and wounded and injured you would be. Physically, let alone emotionally, how traumatized you would be. How frustrated you would be. How angry you would be. Zayd ibn Haritha, who was walking with the Prophet ﷺ, literally, no exaggeration, he freaked out when he saw this. What is going on here? Have people lost their humanity? And he jumped in and started trying to catch the rocks with his body, trying to shield. And they were coming from all sides. And he kept going around the Prophet ﷺ, trying to shield him from the rocks. And it said one of the rocks ended up hitting him on the head so badly that it wounded him in the head, and he was bleeding from his head. Suffered a major wound on his head. And that's when the Prophet ﷺ told him, he said, just move away from me. You're going to die. And the Prophet ﷺ kept going. And it said he was bleeding from all over his entire body. And because, like I mentioned, that narration specifically, they were targeting his feet were completely torn up and bleeding so much that the Prophet ﷺ used to wear leather sandals. The narration actually mentions that that his sandals had been soaked, had been colored red. His sandals had been soaked in blood. Leather soaks it up, right? They had been soaked in blood. They were colored red. And that if you ever bleed or kind of, get a little bit of a wound or something, when it dries up and it crushes up, it gets really hard. You have to scrape it off even when you're cleaning blood off of you. The blood had just hardened and dried up and crusted up so badly that when he finally did remove his sandals after everything was said and done, he had to literally rip and peel them off of his feet. This happened for 3 miles. When the Prophet ﷺ, when he finally reached the place where they stopped and they said, all right, we're tired. The people throwing the rocks got tired. He said, we're done, we're tired with this, we're bored with this. And they decided to just head back into town. The Prophet ﷺ stopped at that point. And the narration mentions this was actually before he even sat down. Still standing on his feet, blood dripping from his body, open wounds. The Prophet ﷺ, the narration says, he looked up into the sky and he made dua. Supplication, dua. He talked to Allah. He spoke to Allah. And even what he said to Allah is recorded for us at that time. The Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma ilayka ashku du'fa quwwati. He said, oh Allah, only to you do I complain of my weakness. Wa qillata hilati. And only to you, O Allah, am I here complaining of my own lack of resources. Wa hawani ala nas ya arhamar rahimin. And only to you, O Allah, am I here complaining of my lack of respect in the eyes of these people. It's my fault. They don't respect me. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, O most merciful of all of those capable of showing any mercy. Anta Rabbul Mustada'afin. O Allah, you are the Lord, the Master, the Creator, the Sustainer, the Provider, the Caretaker of all those who are weak, downtrodden, oppressed, abused, beaten, bruised. You're their Lord and their caretaker. Wa anta Rabbi, and you are my Lord and my Master. I'm standing here, O Allah, bruised and beaten, bloodied, wounded. You are my Lord, O Allah. Ila man takilni. O Allah, who do you hand me over to? Who do you hand me over to? Ila ba'idin yatajahamuni, to someone who is devoid of any mercy, someone who has no compassion, so that he would rough me up and treat me in this manner, in this fashion. Am ila aduwin malaktahu amri, or oh Allah, have you handed me over to my own enemies and given them full control over me? Even if that be the case, O Allah, He says, illam yakun bika alayya ghadabun fala ubali. As long as you are not angry with me, O Allah, as long as you're not upset with me, O Allah, fala ubali, I don't care about anything else. I don't care about anything else, O Allah, as long as you're not upset or angry with me. غَيْرَ أَنَّ عَافِيَتَكَ هِيَ أَوْسَعُ لِي. The only thing I need, O Allah, is your forgiveness, your mercy, and your protection. Because that is more than what I need. That is more than what I could ever ask for. أعوذ بنور وجهك. Oh Allah, I take refuge in the light of your face, the illumination of your face. الذي أشرقت له الظلمات. That removes all the layers upon layers of darkness. وصلح عليه أمر الدنيا والآخرة. And it can literally fix everything in this life and in the next life. أن يحل علي غضبك. Just so Allah, protect me from your anger and your punishment and your wrath ever taking hold of me. That I never incur your anger and your wrath. Oh, أَيَنْزِلَ بِيَ سَخَطُكَ. Or that your displeasure and anger and punishment would descend upon me. Just protect me from you ever being displeased with me, or from your punishment and your anger and your wrath ever coming down upon me. لَكَ الْعُتْبَى حَتَّى تَرْضَى. لَكَ الْعُتْبَى حَتَّى تَرْضَى. Oh Allah, at the end of the day, everything that's done for you, everything that's done is done only and only for you, for your sake, until you are pleased, oh Allah. Everything that is being done solely for you, just so that you are pleased, oh Allah. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِكَ. There is no ability to do good, no power and strength to be able to resist evil, except by your mercy and your blessing, oh Allah. This was the dua of the Prophet ﷺ. He talked to Allah at that time. He spoke to Allah. He called out to Allah. He called upon Allah. This is dua. This is its practical role in our lives. This is how it's meant to manifest itself within our daily lives. And this is how the Prophet ﷺ taught us how to do it. This is how he practiced it. Now, what was the outcome of this? This is where it gets very interesting. And I need everyone to pay very close attention, because you're going to have to really think about this. You're going to have to pay attention and understand this. How does the story go on? The story goes on that when the Prophet ﷺ sat down, and Jibreel alayhi salam comes to the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, the heavens and the earth have shaken up. You've shaken up the heavens and the earth. with not only what has transpired with you, but what you have said afterwards. As your dua has such power. It is so heartfelt. The way you spoke to Allah was so sincere and so heartfelt, so full of emotion, that it has shaken up the heavens and the earth. And I have come to you now, and I have brought with me this angel, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has deputed. He has put him in charge of the mountains, and He has sent him with me at your disposal, waiting for your command, that you just issue the command, O Messenger of Allah. And He will cause these mountains to come together. Taif is a valley sitting between mountains, that He will cause the mountains to come together by the command of Allah, and literally crush and annihilate and remove any trace of these people ever having existed there, in retribution, in response for what they've done for you. Your prayer's been heard. What did the Prophet ﷺ say at that time is also very well known to us. He said, no. I have no ill will towards these people. I do not want to see these people destroyed or ruined. He goes, rather I hope that these people would embrace and accept the message. And if not them, then someone from their progeny, from their generations to come, somebody later on down the road from these people will be guided, and will come to guidance, and will come to recognize Allah and realize the message of His Son. That's what he said at that time. But you have to understand one thing that's very profound that we learn from this. The Prophet ﷺ, when he went through this great trial and this great hardship, he did what? He talked to Allah, he turned to Allah, he connected with Allah. What does that do? What effect does that have on the person? That removes the anger. That takes away the frustration. That brings peace and tranquility and serenity and calmness. A person is conversing and talking with Allah. A person is connecting to Allah, saying the name of Allah, thinking about Allah. And that washes peace and tranquility over the person. When a person can move past the anger, the frustration, and come to a place in a position where they are peaceful and tranquil, then a person is thinking clearly. Then a person is thinking long term. Then a person realizes what is right and what is wrong. And so the Prophet ﷺ taught us at that moment. He taught us a lesson. That when you go through maybe the most difficult experience of your life, you first and foremost turn and connect to Allah. At all times, at all moments, you stay connected to Allah. You talk to Allah. You remember Allah. And what that does is that when you are faced with a critical decision, the Prophet ﷺ is being afforded this opportunity to destroy these people by Allah. And what they had done with him, and how they had dismissed him and ridiculed him and mocked him, that if he would have asked the angel to destroy these people, he would have completely been in the right. He would have not been in the wrong. But the Prophet ﷺ is able to take what we call, quote unquote, the high road. He's able to invest into this situation, use this experience as an investment for the guidance and the future of these people, the eternal salvation of these people. And that connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plays a very powerful role in that. And then what is the outcome? What is the outcome? You know, we talk about later Taif became Muslim, and Islam was brought to the subcontinent, or at least parts of the subcontinent, from some of those people who came from the later generations of the people of Taif. You don't even have to go that far into Islamic history.
Allah